opinion tends to be deeply divided in Jammu and Kashmir, but the murder of Shujaat Bukhari, the acclaimed journalist, seems to have brought together people across the different spectrums, across the political spectrum, in shock, in grief, and even in anger. One such person is joining me on the show, Omar Abdullah, former Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir and a leader of the National Conference. Thanks very much indeed, Omar, for joining us at this terrible time. Now, from your tweets, and you've been tweeting since yesterday when news came in of Shujaat's death, one gets a sense of how anguished you were personally, because I assume you, like so many others in public life in Jammu and Kashmir, knew him really well. But I think the thing that everyone is trying to understand and make sense of is that when one keeps saying that Shujaat was in a sense killed for speaking the truth, that tends to be somewhat generic. What specifically do you think were the kind of truth or truths that Shujaat was speaking and writing about that you think got him killed?
Well, I can't speak for what got him killed, Vasu, because I don't know which militant organization, which organization is behind this, what it is that motivated them to attack him the way they did yesterday.
Sure.
The fact that Shujaat has been outspoken in terms of the need for peace in Jammu and Kashmir, the need for dialogue. He was equally critical of the militant attacks on police personnel and others, as he was critical of the excessive use of force against protesters. He has been a consistent votary for the need for a dialogue between New Delhi and Jammu and Kashmir, and also he was part of the track two dialogue process between India and Pakistan. He has been a consistent advocate of a dialogue between India and Pakistan as well.
Right.
So on the face of it, there's nothing that jumps out at you, because he wasn't the sort who took sides. I mean,
yeah.
He reported the stories, he said what he had to. Oftentimes what he said would have been somewhat unpalatable to the national mainstream in this part of the world, and sometimes what he said would have been unpalatable to our neighbor across the border in Pakistan. So, I mean, I don't know what it is that he said that finally pushed these people to attack him and assassinate him the way they did yesterday.
I know. I mean, I think we're all trying to make sense of it, and also depending, of course, on whatever information that we're getting in bits and pieces from the security forces. The name of the Lashkar-e-Toiba has been doing the rounds, but again, this is very, very preliminary. But it does appear, just based on those whatever images have been released and also the manner of the execution, that he was killed, it would appear, by one of the terrorist groups operating in the valley. So obviously it was, again, we're speculating here, but obviously it had to do something with the kind of language of peace that he was speaking of, that you mentioned.
Well, this is not the first time that people who have expressed an interest in dialogue or in peace have been killed like this. In the past also, you've had Abdul Ghani Lone,
Yes.
who was assassinated some years ago because he was believed to have been an advocate for peace, an advocate for dialogue. And there have been numerous other voices in the past that have been silenced in similar ways. Shujaat also seems to have been a victim of his desire for a negotiated settlement, for a dialogue. But I think it's also important, we need to know that, or understand that Shujaat wasn't a target of opportunity. It's not as if these people were waiting to see who would come by and just attack any random sort of vehicle that left the press club, the press colony. From all accounts, it seems that in this case it was meant for him. And one hopes that the police and the other intelligence agencies will be able to get to the bottom of this conspiracy, and we can find out exactly why this organization, or whichever organization it was from the militant ranks, why it was that he was targeted.
Right.
I think it's also one of the other aspects that will need to be looked at is how these people were able to roam around so freely in Srinagar. Just 24 hours before Shujaat was killed, I had been told by my colleagues that the police had mentioned that in that part of Srinagar, 2 armed militants were spotted or seen 24 hours earlier. So again, it would suggest that these people were not only free to move around, they recce'd the area, and then when they spotted Shujaat, they finally targeted him.
Right. Now, of course, Pakistan has not been able to resist the temptation to try and fish around in troubled waters, tweeting about the fact that Shujaat was killed because one of the last tweets he sent out was about that UN human rights report that was, in a sense, critical of the track record of both governments. And you, of course, immediately kind of tweeted back at them, saying that this is quite unacceptable. They subsequently, it appears, deleted that tweet.
Must have done, but then I'm not surprised. They have consistently and always wanted to fish in the troubled waters of Kashmir. Look, Shujaat was not the only person to tweet that United Nations, that UN human rights report. A lot of other people did, not only from within Jammu and Kashmir, but also from the rest of the country as well. I mean, for God's sake, how stupid do we have to be to believe that Shujaat would have been targeted for a tweet about a report that was put out by this by this human rights organization? So many of us spoke about it, so many of us talked about it, a lot of people tweeted about it. So to link Shujaat's killing to a United Nations report, I think is absurd in the extreme.
Right. Umar, this has been a very bloody past couple of days because it's Shujaat who was killed as well as his security officers. There was also, one of the members of the security forces, Aurangzeb, abducted and killed. The Deputy Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir just told me, just a short while ago, that there's no question of extending the Ramzan ceasefire. Do you think that makes sense at this point?
But I think we need to understand that the decision to extend the Ramzan ceasefire will be taken far above the pay grade of the Deputy Chief Minister. I don't think he's even in the consultative process for this sort of a decision.
Right.
It will be taken at the level of the Prime Minister's office and nowhere else. They obviously need to look at the situation in its entirety, to what extent the ceasefire has helped the situation, to what extent, if at all, the situation has deteriorated during this period of the ceasefire, and then take an informed decision. I'm no longer Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir. I'm not privy to the intelligence reports that allowed them to announce this ceasefire in the run-up to Eid, and I wouldn't be privy to the intelligence reports that they'll be receiving now.
Okay. Last question to you. We've seen that the Home Minister has come out and tweeted very strongly expressing his condemnation at Shujaat Bukhari's killing. Some are questioning why the Prime Minister has not taken note of it, at least so far. Fair to ask that question?
Well, fair to ask the question, but then we also know that the Prime Minister has been known to be selective in the subjects that he tweets about and the speed with which he responds. This is not the first time even a Jammu and Kashmir related matter has received a delayed response from the Prime Minister, or in some cases no response at all. I mean, it's for him to decide whether he wants to speak up. The fact that the Home Minister has spoken, the fact that the Vice President of India has expressed condolences, and so many others have, I think makes the silence of the Prime Minister all the more glaring. But he is the master of his own Twitter handle, and only he can decide when and how it will be used.
Right, and he well might do that, but we'll have to wait and see. Omar Abdullah, thanks very much indeed for joining us. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Vasu.